So I'm Alex McHugh. I'm a communications associate at Students for Liberty, and I'm joined today for SFL Live with Peter Jaworski. He's a professor at Georgetown and the host of the first section of our new online course called Liberty 101. So we're going to do a little discussion tonight about that first section of the course. We might get into some of the other sections if we get there, but I think we'll focus on philosophy. We'll find out a little bit more about what you can learn if you sign up for that. So just real briefly, if you're viewing this from the email that we sent out earlier today, there should be a sign-up form over on the side there if you want to sign up for the course either during this session or immediately after. If you sign up within 1 hour after this broadcast, we're actually going to send you out a discount code for the International Students for Liberty Conference. So if you wanted to get $5 off your ISFLC registration, sign up either during this broadcast or within an hour afterwards, and we'll do that for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter real quick just to give us a little more information about who you are, why you chose to be part of this project, and why you're excited about it.
Yeah, so I'm Peter Jaworski. I'm an assistant teacher professor at Georgetown University. I work at the business school there at Georgetown, although my PhD is in philosophy. I've been interested in these ideas for a really long time, and I'm always excited to talk about them. When I was asked to film these videos, of course I said yes, I'd love to do them.
Great. All right, so the first question that I had for you is one that I think anybody who's been watching the promotion that we've been doing about this course probably has as well. We've been talking a lot about liberty and asking the question, all right, what is liberty actually? What does it mean? So now I'm going to get an answer out of you, and you're going to tell us, what is liberty?
Well, I mean, I talked a little bit about it in the Liberty film. I think there's different senses of liberty. I know that within the movement and amongst libertarians, they like to think that there's like one correct sense of liberty. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's worth fighting over the definition of a concept like liberty very much. I think the meaning of those concepts changes with use, and that's kind of what's normative on the rest of us. It's the way people use those concepts. There's at least two. One is the sense that you and I are going to agree about, and that's like a freedom from constraint. So to have liberty is to be free from certain kinds of constraints. We're interested in political liberty as libertarians, and that's freedom from the constraint of other people. Political liberty in a political context, that has to do with other people making me do something that I don't want to do. And to be free in that sense is to not have anybody else impose that kind of thing on you. The second sense of liberty is the sense in which I am free to, say, do something or receive something. It makes sense to say, I don't know, the freedom to fly, or the freedom to have, I don't know, something or other. And here, it's not the sense of like people are free to do something just in case somebody else doesn't stop them from doing it. It's having access to something that allows you to have freedom. I think both of those senses are perfectly sensible, and I don't really see much of a point in fighting about the like true meaning of liberty.
Mm. Yeah, so that second one is one that we don't focus on quite as much as libertarians. You mentioned we're more concerned about the restraints and all of that. I was wondering if you could give a couple examples of what some of those constraints or restraints might look like. So what are some of the specific things that libertarians are worried about impeding on their freedoms?
Well, look, I mean, Ohio just voted down the opportunity that they had to legalize marijuana. Now, I know it's complicated and controversial, specifically because they were going to award, I think it was like 10 licenses for. So basically, they would set up a monopoly. So it's not exactly the kind of thing that libertarians want, but the restriction from being able to smoke pot if you want to is a kind of restriction that I think a lot of libertarians were upset about. There's I mean, there's so many, it's hard to list them all, right? But like in some places, I don't know, you can't smoke cigarettes even indoors, even if the business is okay with it, even if they want to set up a place where you can smoke cigarettes. In a lot of states, you can't do that. We're not free to start businesses without certain kinds of regulations or jumping through certain kinds of hoops. In some countries, you can't start certain businesses at all, I guess including this one, because you can't open a marijuana store if you wanted to. So those are examples of restrictions, right? Our economic liberty is restrained in a number of different ways. Those are all genuine restrictions on our freedom. I mean, you might also think, I mean, things are changing significantly, but in a way, I mean, my own view is that the government shouldn't have anything to do with marriage, but if it's gonna have something to do with marriage, then it seems crazy that a whole group of people were not, we're not able to be enfranchised in that. So, we didn't have gay marriage, neither in the US nor in Canada. I'm from Canada for a long time. Now, times have changed, thankfully, and those restraints are no longer there, but that was a real restraint.
So as a Canadian, you have to weigh in on the never-ending dispute. Which one is more free, the US or Canada?
Is there even a dispute, honestly? It's obvious that Canada is a freer country. I don't even see this as controversial, and I'm only half kidding. Sure, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but speaking honestly, I've been on the side of thinking that Canada is a freer country for a long time. The Fraser Institute and the Cato Institute, they do their annual Economic Freedom of the World report, and Canada beats the pants off of the US.
Yeah.
I think it was the Legatum Institute. I'm not going to remember this off the top of my head, but I think the Legatum Institute basically did a list of, they took a look at both economic and civil and political freedoms.
Okay, because I know Canada, with the economic freedoms, has been much better recently.
Yeah, but we have better, I think, civil liberties and political liberties as well. Canada just is a freer country. I don't care what anybody says. And I've got the social science to back me up. So like I was saying, I think the Legatum Institute took a look at across, not just economic freedom, but they incorporated civil and political freedom. People are going to argue about the methodology. They're going to argue about the specific freedoms that are listed. But according to that study, Canada is #1 in the world, right? Now I think Canada, Switzerland, Denmark, these are all freer countries than the US, and there's probably a few more too, like New Zealand, maybe Australia, but I don't know about that for sure.
All right, we'll leave that up to everyone to decide. But thanks for weighing in.
We'll just call it the myth of like American freedom. You guys are stuck in the 1980s or the 1970s when that was true. But actually, I mean, historically, Canada has been a freer country than the U.S., especially when you consider significant things like slavery, right? We had the Underground Railway, and people came to Canada for freedom. There was a Buxton Liberty Bell, which is just outside of Windsor, and every time a slave entered the city of Buxton, they would ring that bell to announce that, like, here, this person is finally free, and Canada was just like the land of liberty. And then Pierre Trudeau showed up, did some things, and I think that we're sort of symbolically still associated with that, although after Trudeau left, and once Jean Chrétien came into office, we started becoming more free again. So it was the exception to the general historical rule, and the historical rule is that Canada has been and will be and is now a freer country than the United States of America.
Well, there you go. See, not only does everyone get to learn about philosophy tonight, they also got a little lesson in history.
Yeah, that's about as patriotic as I get, I guess.
Well, no, that's great. But so to get back to the course itself, the next question that I had for you is, which of these videos was the most fun to film? Which of these did you have the most fun with?
I mean,
I have a suspicion it's the war-related one. But.
Okay, well, that is going to be my answer. I don't know why that would be your suspicion. I'll give you my answer, and then maybe you can tell me why that was your suspicion. I get a little bit grumpy when we get associated with, by we I mean libertarians or classical liberals, the easy association with conservatives. I don't like it, and so the opportunity to sort of distinguish what we think from most contemporary conservatives, you know, I enjoy doing that, right? For a lot of people who are new to libertarianism, they kind of think of us as being more right-wing than the right-wingers or something like that. But I really like to draw sharp distinctions and to say, no, 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 we're actually distinct from both contemporary liberals and contemporary conservatives on very important issues, although we share certain planks with both, right? So I actually enjoyed putting together all of those videos. I thought it was a lot of fun, but the peace video was a lot of fun. Yeah, war, what is it good for?
Well, right, it was a fun one to watch. So here's why I had the suspicion is you got very into the dancing.
Good. So any opportunity I have to dance, I'll take it, sure.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, one of the things that people should look out for if you want to see this guy do some dancing to some really excellent, when is that song from? Is that 70s?
Oh, God, yes, I'll go with 70s, sure.
Yeah, so the peace video in the philosophy section. Check it out and dance along. It's a good song with a great message. So.
Agreed.
But to get a little bit more serious, I wanted to ask you what one of the most common challenges that you encounter when you're, I don't know, talking with fellow professors, talking with students, talking with random people you meet on the street. What are the criticisms of libertarianism and the challenges to libertarianism that they bring up with you most frequently, and how do you respond to those?
I mean, I think the most obvious question that most people ask is, what would libertarians do about poor people and about people who are underprivileged? I think that's probably the most common question that I get from professors and from academics. Usually the debate is about natural rights or the stringent version of libertarianism, which, by the way, I'm not like, that's not my view.
Well, what exactly do you mean by the stringent version of libertarianism?
I mean that like people have certain rights. I think that's actually not the stringent view, but take self-ownership kinds of libertarians, or take people who accept the non-aggression axiom or the non-aggression principle, whatever you want to call it, right? And now consider the implications of the non-aggression axiom, right? So here's one. Suppose it were true that like I could save literally the entire world, but I need to take, a penny from your pocket. And so I ask you, can I take a penny from your pocket? And you say no. Now the question is, like, should I just take it?
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm confronted with questions like that, my answer is, sure, of course. I think actually I do feel pretty strongly about it. I think the answer is, of course I should take it. The survival of people all over the world weighs more heavily than your property right to a penny. Right?
Yeah,
and
I think most people would not expect to hear a libertarian say that.
Yeah, so that's why I also enjoyed doing the peace video, right? Because this is unusual and surprising. And actually, there's a whole host in the academy. I think one of the more exciting things that is happening right now is the whole group of bleeding heart libertarians. I count myself amongst their number. We're young-ish. There's a lot of us. We publish a lot. And I think it's one of the more exciting things happening in the academy. But again, to return to your earlier question, so professors might ask me about that, and my colleagues might ask me about that. But most people really care about the poor and what we would do about the poor. And I think my answer to it, and I think part of the answer that all of us should give to that is, the fact that that question is so popular suggests to me that the people asking about it care about it. And maybe there are enough people that care about it such that were we to live in a libertarian world, those people would do something. Right? I mean, it's also true that every time the government does anything, it crowds out our compassionate, sympathetic, and community-oriented spirit. So if I'm thinking of making a contribution somewhere and the government announces a new $1 billion subsidy for the thing that I was going to give, charitable money to, then I'm like, oh, okay, they don't need me. I'll go give my money somewhere else, or I'll keep the money myself. I think that's true for a lot of people. If you read de Tocqueville, right, Democracy in America, he discusses the ways in which, every time an American saw a problem, they wouldn't think to go to the government. Instead, they would form a committee, like a private club, to fix this particular problem, whatever it is, a pothole, Jimmy who is poor, whatever, right? And people don't do that anymore. I mean, of course they do, but not maybe to the same extent. And I think a lot of government action crowds out private action. I think whenever there's a tragedy, you see people step up and make charitable contributions. I think that suggests that we shouldn't be as worried about it as we might be. I think there will be private solutions.
I really love that answer. I like that you bring up the idea of sort of flipping it on them and saying, well, you're asking about it. If the government wasn't providing it, you'd be asking about it and figuring out how to do it yourself.
Yeah, and then you get the opportunity to hear them say, well, yes, I have charitable instincts.
But you.
But it's all these other people who are the problem. And it's like, if that's the most popular question that libertarians receive, then maybe more people have those charitable instincts. Maybe. Right. Maybe.
It actually, it reminds me of an argument I like about that restraint question that comes up when people say, if we don't stop people from, putting drugs in their body or doing this or doing that, they're, everybody's going to do it. And I like to flip it on them and say, if heroin were legal tomorrow, would you start doing that? But
that's good. Yeah, most people don't do heroin most people don't avoid doing heroin because it's illegal. Most people avoid doing heroin because heroin is bad for you, okay? If you don't get anything else out of this video, get this, don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah, you heard it from the man himself. It's a bad idea.
Sorry, I should rephrase that. Don't do some drugs, kids. Some of them are bad.
Yeah, I think you're featured in some videos about craft breweries over on the Learn Liberty site, aren't you?
Yeah. I am, yeah, sure.
But yeah, so you sort of anticipated my next question. You told everyone that they should check out Alexis de Tocqueville for reminders about civil society and how important that is. But the next question I had was, if I were someone who watched this philosophy section of the course, really got a lot out of it, and wanted to learn more about classical liberal thinkers, who is someone that I should go read next?
Okay, so you asked the question about classical liberals. If you ask the question about libertarianism, I can't recommend Robert Nozick's Anarchy, State, and Utopia enough. It's such a joy to read that book. It's such a pleasure to begin at the beginning and to read through the whole thing, to watch Robert Nozick, who is not just a terrific thinker, but also such a beautiful writer from beginning to end. So if you're looking into libertarianism, I'd recommend Anarchy, State, and Utopia. My colleague Jason Brennan has a nice overview book. I think it's called What is Libertarianism, published by Oxford University Press. That's something that people should check out for sure. But if you ask me about classical liberals, then I would point to Adam Smith and to David Hume. Both of those thinkers, I mean, we read a lot out of Adam Smith. We read The Wealth of Nations, but we don't pay enough attention, I think, to the theory of moral sentiments. And I think there's much more to be learned from the theory of moral sentiments that we, who are in this, haven't yet teased out. But both David Hume and Adam Smith, I can't recommend those enough.
Okay.
I'd go in this order. I'd go Robert Nozick, David Hume, Adam Smith, in that order. David Hume also happens to be my favorite philosopher as well, right? So there you are.
Okay, so that's, we got 4 different thinkers out of that, so you've got a lot to choose from. I'm actually reading some of Wealth of Nations right now, so I can confirm that Adam Smith has a lot of very interesting insights that we sometimes forget about. So definitely, definitely glad you brought that one up. The next thing that I wanted to go to, so we've talked a little bit about the peace video, we've talked a little bit about liberty, we've hit on a couple of the different issues, but one of the ones that is a bit unique in this series is the toleration video. And so that one, at the bottom, you've got a couple of related videos. All of the sections of the course have some related material so that you can learn a little bit more. But on the toleration video specifically, there's a related video that poses a very interesting question. And it asks, can libertarianism tolerate the existence of a socialist community? That's a ridiculous question. I mean, on face, right? How would you answer that question?
The answer is, of course, yes. Of course, yes. Think of the Amish and the Hutterites as like perfect examples of voluntary groups that kind of do their own thing. And if you want to get together with a bunch of your friends and you want to run a socialist experiment, be my guest. The only constraint is like you can't conscript me into service, right? You can't conscript other people into service. You can go ahead and live your life according to socialism, according to whatever weird political views, political or religious views you might have. Do your own thing, but you can't make people join your group, and you can't make people stay in your group. So long as people have the freedom to exit, no problem. I mean, in a way, aren't the kibbutzim, is it kibbutzim, kibbutz? The kibbutz in like Israel?
I'm not sure the plural versus singular, but...
Yeah, okay. Well, those are essentially, I mean, aren't they kind of socialist communities, and you can enter and you can leave whenever?
Why don't you explain a little bit about what they are? I'm not sure that everybody would necessarily be familiar with that.
I don't know enough about them to even like hazard a guess. I mean, we can talk about the Amish. I guess I know a little bit more about them. But they have their own little community. They have their rules. They have groups of about 160 people, somewhere around there, 140 to 160 people. Once they get too large, they split off into separate Amish communities. They live their lives peacefully. They don't bother other people. And then once their kids, once their children come of age or they become 16, they allow them to like leave the community and decide whether they want to stay in the Amish community or not. And what could be, from a libertarian perspective, what could be wrong with that? All that matters is voluntary association. You want to associate with others based on a creed, based on a political philosophy or a political ideology, go for it, right? Use your own money, right? Don't conscript other people. You can't make other people join you. You can't make other people do things that they don't sign up for, but you're free to do it. Go for it, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like that's, I mean, look, let me just tie this back into Robert Nozick's Anarchy, State, and Utopia, because he thought libertarianism was actually a framework for utopia. And what he meant by that is that, like, whatever your personal vision of utopia is, you can go ahead and start that with a group of your others, right? Group of like-minded others. And then go ahead and do it. Under no other political system are you free to just sort of do whatever you'd like, as it were. As long as people are consenting, libertarians are like, go to it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's Nozick's idea of that libertarian utopia is a very interesting one. I mean, I think you're right. Also, it's philosophically unique from a lot of the different approaches that you get.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to build a world in which we'll live, it sort of allows different worlds to flourish, which makes it much easier when you can't predict and forecast what the world will look like in 20 or 50 years, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, the Amish example is a good one too, because you don't really worry about the Amish overtaking the rest of us, and
no, they're kind of amazing people. I lived in Worcester, Ohio for a while, and it was amazing to see, you know, that community. They interacted with people. You know, I would go to the Walmart, and on the weekend, that's like one of the things that the young that young Amish people do is that they go to the Walmart. That's like it's an event on the weekend for them to go there, at least at Worcester. As far as I know, that's true. So it was amazing, and yeah, great. Perfect. What could be wrong with that?
Sounds truly beautiful.
I don't want to be Amish, by the way, nor I don't want. That's not for me. But I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Live your life however you see fit, right? Make an informed decision and then do it.
Okay, so making informed decisions, living your own life, these things are very, very important, but sometimes people make bad decisions, right? I mean, we were talking about all sorts of things earlier that people can get into that we might want to restrict them from doing because we think that it'll make them less happy down the road, right? So this presents sort of an interesting question for libertarians. We think that people tend to make good decisions, but we have to admit that sometimes they really, really don't. Why is it that we still place so much importance on liberty and on political liberty, which means not stopping them from taking these actions? Isn't it after all more important that they're healthy and happy rather than free?
So I see like three questions about one. First, let me answer your last question. Is it more important for you to be healthy and happy than free? This might be like a controversial answer, but my view is it is more important for me to be healthy and happy than to be free. I'd rather be alive and happy than free and miserable, right? That's my own view. In my hierarchy, I'm going to put happiness above liberty. But why do I endorse in a political context political liberty? Well, the reason why is like manifold, right? One is that one of the constituents of happiness surely is freedom, right? People are happier if they have greater economic freedom. That's just a social scientific empirical fact. It's part of my happiness, for example, that I can be entrepreneurial. Right? That I can pursue goals and things that I most like. It's part of what makes me happy is being free to choose, right? Also, you might like political liberty precisely because, now you say that libertarians think that people make good decisions. Maybe that's not true. But even if it's not true, I happen to think that for the most part, with respect to myself, right, I'm a better judge of what's good for me, at least on its face, than anybody else. Now, of course, I go to a doctor, and a doctor knows more about what's going on inside of my body than I do, right? But that's not in conflict with the claim that I know more about my own preferences, and I know more about what would make a good life for me than anybody else, right? But suppose that people do make really bad decisions. Okay, is it a good idea? It's not like, is it a good idea to put people in charge of other people? Like, are people who have the authority to tell me how to live my life, are they somehow immune from the biases, the cognitive biases, the irrationalities, the problems that plague ordinary people? If we're really crummy at making decisions, why would we put a bunch of crummy people in charge of a bunch of other people? I mean, I just don't understand. I think Frederick Bastiat, right? He's another classical liberal we can mention too. He opens this question. He's like, well, he doesn't say this, right? But a lot of people object to libertarianism by saying, well, people are selfish, and they only care about themselves, and they make bad decisions. Oh, good. So let's take those people and give them a bunch of guns, give them the authority to decide how other people live their lives. Well, if they're selfish, no. And if they make bad decisions, they're going to make bad decisions about a whole lot of other people, especially since they don't. I mean, why would they be motivated to care about my good as much as I'm motivated to care about my good? After all, it's me who feels the pain, right? It's not them who feels my pain. Right? They might be very empathetic people, and I don't doubt that they are, but it's still true that my pain, I feel my pain more like, more significantly than some other person feels my pain. I would trust my mom, and I would trust my dad, and I would trust my girlfriend, and I would trust certain people to make decisions on my behalf. But some stranger, like bureaucrat number 43, over there in the corner office, being like, oh, here's what's good for Peter? No, fuck that.
Yeah, you're probably his 100th decision of the day, and
Yeah, that guy does not care about me, right?
yeah, I think people look at these questions, and I mean, it's great you brought up Bastiat because he's really great at getting into what's going on behind the scenes and how these things actually happen, because people tend to think, oh, bad things are happening, we'll just do something and stop it, and then bad things won't happen, and they don't think about, well, how do we actually stop it? What does that entail? What does that look like? So yeah, Bastiat is excellent saying, well, that looks kind of ridiculous when you put it, put it into reality. So he's another one that everyone should check out. You really, I mean, we've racked up now, I think, 6 different thinkers that everyone should check out. Were all of these involved and influential on you in the things that you say in these videos, or are all the ideas represented?
Oh, the ones that we're talking about now?
So the 6 thinkers that we've mentioned, we've talked about de Tocqueville and Bastiat and Adam Smith and Nozick and Hume. And I was just wondering if all of these thinkers who, are clearly so related to these ideas, are their ideas ones that influence the things that you talk about in these videos, or did those come from other thinkers as well?
Yeah, I mean, from them and a lot more besides. Like, I'll add John Locke to the list. When I was thinking about toleration, he's the first person that I looked at. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's tough to even distinguish and disentangle all of the different influences. I mean, all of them are significant, right? At least to me, right? All of them have been persuasive and influential to what I now think, right? So yeah.
Great. Yeah, sorry, I just want to make sure everyone gets their full reading list watch the videos.
Well, let me add this to everyone's reading list.
Oh, hey. Tell us about that for a minute.
Markets Without Limits is a book that I wrote with my colleague Jason Brennan. It just came out last month. I'm really excited about it. In it, we argue that anything you can do for free, you can do for money, which is a kind of aesthetically pleasing slogan. The more precise statement would be anything you can do for free, you can exchange on a market, because a market's not just, you can barter on a market, so it doesn't have to be cash currency. So that's the view. And we address ourselves to people like Michael Sandel, who wrote What Money Can't Buy, and Deborah Satz, Margaret Jane Radin, Elizabeth Anderson, a whole host of philosophers. It's actually, I mean, on Cato Unbound this month, we're the lead essay on this topic, on the moral limits of markets. And then Benjamin Barber, who's a political scientist, and Robert Kuttner will be responding. But every year, there's at least 3 or 4 books that talk about the moral limits of markets from the perspective that, like, we really need to limit markets. And Jason Brennan and I are amongst the few people who are on the other side, and so we're contributing to the debate by saying, look, the arguments that you've presented, they don't work, and we should be free to buy and sell, anything that it is okay for us to give away for free as a gift. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can think of a lot of examples from the past couple of years of things that people don't want us to sell. But switching modes a little bit, I've got a fun question for you. The individualism video has a Game of Thrones theme. Are you a fan of Game of Thrones? Are you someone who watches the series?
Yes. I've watched every single episode of that show, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so who are your favorite characters?
Oh, geez. So, you know, the cast of characters in Game of Thrones is so unconscionably high. And Game of Thrones isn't on right now, so, you know, obviously I've forgotten about 3/4 of those characters. But I really like Jon Snow, and then I like Tyrion Lannister. Right?
Okay.
Those are probably my two favorite characters, especially the Lannister guy.
Yeah, and so in the video, go ahead.
Peter Dinklage is the actor. That's the one who I like.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in the video you talk a little bit about the political themes that you can draw out of Game of Thrones, and you mentioned that one of these countries is so let me phrase this question a little differently. Which of the kingdoms is the closest to the libertarian system, and which is the furthest from, or is this even a sensible way to talk about these things?
No, that's perfectly fine. But if you're going to ask me like off the cuff, I don't even remember the names of the kingdoms. I had to do research for that part. So I'm sorry. I know, I mean, like I said, I've watched every episode. But am I going to remember everything about that show? No, right? I'm not going to.
If I asked you for a random Nozick quote right now, you'd be able to just give me.
Probably do it, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But I can't do it for Game of Thrones. Sorry. I'll be able to do it once the show starts up again, and then I'll remember all the characters, and I'll remember all the different kingdoms, and I'll try to remember all of the different plot lines. But it's one of the more frustrating things about that show is that there's so much going on. I mean, it's one of the benefits of that show because you can enjoy lots of elements of it, but I can't keep it all straight. I can't remember.
Yeah. Don't even bother with the books. It's even worse.
Why would I read the book if I can just watch it on TV? That's crazy talk. There's a great joke by Jim Gaffigan. Jim Gaffigan has a great joke where he's like, I went to see this movie, and they're like, oh, if you like the movie, you're going to love this book. And he responds by saying, you know what I liked about the movie? No reading.
Fair. Well, when the series comes back, we'll have to do another interview, and we'll find out which of the kingdoms is a libertarian paradise. Probably none of them, right?
Probably none of them.
So we talked a little bit earlier.
Kingdom of Canada. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Just transport all of Canada. That would make Westeros a much better place.
Mm.
But yeah, so we talked a little bit earlier about common criticisms and challenges to libertarianism that you hear, and you hear a lot of them, right? I think anyone who is somewhere in the libertarian world hears a lot of criticism and gets a lot of strong negative reactions from people who don't really necessarily understand what it is that they're critiquing. So my question for you is, why do you think that so many people have these negative preconceptions about libertarianism? Where did those come from?
Yeah. That's a tough question. It's like a question about branding. And most of us,
that's not people, philosophy per se, but...
Oh, no, it's a great question. I think it's an important question. I think the question about branding is just, look, people have lives to lead, they have things to do, they have Game of Thrones things to memorize, right? So they're busy. They don't have all the time in the world to look up all of the different political philosophies and all of the different political ideologies. So they're going to associate an ideology with a caricature, which is the brand of that political philosophy. We can call it a brand if you want. And I think libertarianism, for the longest time, has been associated with especially Ayn Rand, right? I mean, she's been very popular, although now, I mean, I guess people like you grew up with a lot more in the way of libertarian culture, like South Park, for example, one of my favorite shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is such a thing as South Park libertarians, and there have been more things which are very popular that have a libertarian flavor. But back in the day, it was maybe not all, obviously, but a lot of Ayn Rand, and I think, a lot of people just associated libertarianism with a certain kind of selfishness. And I think most people misunderstand what Rand meant by the virtue of selfishness, but the caricature version of Ayn Rand is the one that I think sticks in many people's heads, and it's like, the ideal is me living on an island, you know, and nobody else is on that island with me, and I'm just there living for myself, and I don't care about my mom, and I don't care about my, you know, my family, and I don't care about anyone else. I just have to be the best architect or whatever I can be. I gotta build a railroad or something like that, right? So I think maybe that's the caricature of libertarianism, and then that caricature has stuck as the brand of libertarianism, and my suspicion is that that plays a role in a lot of people who are not familiar with the ideas. I think that plays a role in why they have a negative reaction. Oh, I'll say one other thing. So people tend to think that your moral view automatically leads towards a particular political philosophy. So what it means to care about the poor is to endorse a tax system that includes lots of different programs for the poor, right? So the libertarian answer of saying, yeah, we shouldn't have those programs is unsatisfying to a lot of people. I think a lot of those people need to look at the empirical facts, and they need to stop thinking that our moral views automatically result in certain institutional preferences, because they don't, right? I mean, everybody thinks that food, for example, is like a basic human need. So does it follow that the government should be in charge of making and distributing food? Nobody thinks that. And the reason why is because if the government were to do that, it would suck. I mean, they tried it, and it was terrible. And so we still think that food is a basic human need. And many of us think that, like, everyone should have enough to eat. But the facts point to a market in food, right? So
Yeah.
even if you don't believe in, like, live and let live, even if you disagree with the non-aggression axiom or principle, even if you reject self-ownership, even if you're a thoroughgoing left liberal, you can't just say, well, we need this government program to accomplish this goal. You need to see whether the goal will in fact be accomplished. If you look at the war on drugs as a perfect example of this, even if you think that nobody should do illicit drugs, like nobody, the most obvious answer might be to make it illegal, but it didn't work, and it won't work, and we should do what, like, Portugal did, which is, like, legalize, and you know, that might actually be a solution to the problem of too many people doing drugs, is actually to let people do them. But anyways.
Yeah, can you give a little brief explanation of what happened in Portugal?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you a little bit about it. I'm not an expert on Portugal, but yeah, they decriminalized everything. And people were free to, like, do all of the drugs, heroin, cocaine, whatever. And the effect of Portugal's experiment is that the number of people who did heroin declined. Now, the government in that case also decided to treat the issue of drug abuse as a medical problem rather than a criminal problem. And so they offered all kinds of support for people who wanted to no longer be on heroin or cocaine or whatever. So that was their approach, and they found, just like in the Netherlands, when the Netherlands took a more or less hands-off approach to marijuana, the marijuana use declined amongst Dutch people. The same thing is true in Portugal. We've allowed people to just do it, and then, you know, it's declined over time. So a strategy for, you know, lowering the amount of drug use might very well be the strategy of legalization, right? Well, it's counterintuitive, but you have to look at the empirical facts, right? Anyways.
So that's actually great symmetry. I noticed in the introduction to this section of the course, you mentioned that philosophy is the missing piece when you're trying to decide between a whole bunch of different facts that you have, and you can't decide between those. But once you've got the philosophy portion, you also need the other piece, which is all of these empirical facts, right?
Yeah, well, we need to know what's good. right? Like we need to know what is valuable, right? And then once we know what's good and what's valuable, we need to know how to accomplish getting the good or getting more of whatever it is that is valuable, right? I mean, there's an old joke about economics. It's like here's a way to somebody's like, hey, economists, what's the easiest and fastest way to eliminate the problem of unemployment? How do we lower unemployment? Well, here's an option: just kill all the unemployed people. And there you go. We fixed the problem. But it's a joke, right? It's a joke because nobody thinks that that's a reasonable option. But the reason why we think that is because we have a moral view operating in the background.
That's a great example. Really, yeah. So one of these systems that people often hold up as being really good at delivering these philosophical outcomes that we want, right? So we want people to be happy, we want people to be healthy, we want them to have choices. And a lot of people think that the way that we get that is through systems of democracy and consensus. And we're often taught that group decision-making leads to these good outcomes necessarily, and that acting individually and without the group makes us antisocial and leads to bad outcomes. Could you talk a little bit about group decision-making and consensus decision-making and the difference between that and individual decision-making and why libertarians are okay with the individual form of it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think consensus decision-making is perfectly okay. If everybody agrees about something, then there's no problem. The problem is when there isn't consensus. It's group decision-making where not everyone agrees. And then we're going to shove it down the throat of the minority that doesn't agree. The problem is if you can't persuade me, right, then you're going to make me. And if I don't agree with you and I'm an adult and I've got a mind of my own and I can think for myself, then I think that's the downside. I mean, dude, I don't understand when people think that democracy is some kind of good process for decision making. I don't think that's true at all. I think in some cases consensus decision making is perfectly appropriate, but the kind of thing that makes a democracy is the making the minority do what they don't want to do. And it's that part of it that's a significant problem. Now, libertarians making decisions on their own, I'm not gonna I don't even see that. Like I said, I go to the doctor. I don't just decide to take out my spleen. That's not something that I do.
You're telling me you have friends and family and people whose advice you ask and you live in society.
Yeah, it's just about making those decisions for yourself. It's not about telling everybody else to go away. Right? It's about voluntary association. It's about voluntarism, right? It's about being free to choose people that you associate with and how you live your life. It's not about living on an island and being all by yourself. Loneliness is not a virtue.
All right, so we've covered a whole lot of things. We've got about 10 minutes left, and there's a couple of things that I wanted to announce at the end. So I think right now I'll just give you a chance to sort of summarize real quickly why everybody should go watch the whole section right now, just maybe leave us with one quote from a libertarian thinker that you think sort of encapsulates the philosophy of liberty. Sorry, that's an enormous ask. But
well, yeah, sure. Okay, well, I'll start with that one.
Okay.
You asked me if I could get a quote from Robert Nozick off the top of my head, and it's, we should be okay with consenting capitalist acts amongst consenting adults, right? That's a nice slogan for libertarianism, right? So that's the quote that I'll go with. And then as far as promoting the videos and asking people to watch them and why they should watch them, the people who put the videos together are able to take, you and I are having this conversation now, and probably it would be best if some things were edited. Right? I like just coming up with things in the spur of the moment. I'm not always very good at that. It's sometimes pretty difficult to do it, but the people that I worked with, the people who filmed the videos, they're able not only to edit the video so that like it's amazing. I watch the videos and I'm just really happy with the messages that are out there, and I had support putting together the script for each of those. So I worked with some really talented people, and it's this collaborative. I mean, good. We were just talking about doing things on your own or doing them with others. Part of the benefit of doing it that way is this collaborative enterprise where I can benefit from the opinions and the views of others who know a great deal about this kind of thing. And I'm really happy with the videos that came out as a result of this collaborative effort. I know I'm in front of the camera, and then I guess I take full responsibility for what was said, right? But there really were a lot of people that helped work on those videos, and they're terrific, and people should check them out for that reason. They're also really nice because they summarize a lot of material in a really short and easy to digest format. So if you're interested in these ideas, and obviously if you've stuck around with us all of this time, you obviously take a serious interest in these ideas. Here's a nice little reminder. You probably already know a lot about the ideas already, but here's like a nice little reminder. So there you go. Check out the videos.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a little bit of the process that went into the script for these videos, and there was so much thought that went into this. So
yeah.
I mean, thank you for all the work that you did.
Oh, geez, anytime.
And I mean, I can vouch as someone who would like to think that I've seen these ideas a lot. When I went through and watched the videos myself, it's just, I mean, it's amazing how concise and relatable and interesting you've made all of these concepts. And as anyone who's been with us for the past hour has seen, there are a lot of thinkers, a lot of ideas, and just a lot of really interesting insights packed into these real compact videos. So if you're watching this from the email link, once again, there's a sign-up sheet right over it. I'm honestly not sure if it's on this side or this side, but there's a sign-up sheet on the page as well. And if you sign up within the next hour, we'll send you a discount code for the International Students for Liberty Conference that's coming up this February. So you can get $5 off your registration fee. And I'm also supposed to let you all know about other Liberty.me live events that are going on coming up soon. So the first one that I wanted to alert you all to is coming up on Monday, November 9th at 9 p.m. It's the Tatiana Show, the Road Trip Roundup with Lynn Ulbricht. And that looks really interesting. I wanted to bring this one up because Lynn will also be joining us for the Virginia Regional Conference that Students for Liberty will be putting on. So if you're interested in that, you should watch that and then come to the conference. And the other one that's coming up soon is on Tuesday, November 17th at 10 p.m. And that's the Ion Empire Show, where they'll be talking about some of the current and ongoing wars under President Obama, which, I mean, as we just heard, this peace issue is a very important one for libertarians, and it's one that we could definitely afford to spend some more time on. All right, so with all of that said, thank you, Peter.
I was moving around because I'm down to like 2% battery power, so I had to plug in my laptop.
Very fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. Is there anything that you wanted to leave people with before we sign off?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me get what I would like to leave people with. Buy my book.
I definitely will check it out. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way, too. I think I'm going to be at the ISFLC as well, so say hello if you see me there.
Yeah, get your discount and say hi to this guy when you're there.
All right.
All right. Bye.
All right. Cheers, guys.